Okay, we're good.
This is our yoga presentation. I'm Jonna Papio.
I'm Ryan Luquette.
I'm Julia Vowles.
I'm Jasmine Kears.
And I'm Martha Varma.
In this slide, we will be going over the abstract. Yoga is considered to be the discipline of the mind and the body. Individuals all around the world are involved in yoga. Some people partake in yoga just because it's a fun activity. Some people do it because they find it relaxing, or some people do yoga because they feel it improves their health in different ways. In our replication study, my group and I used video modeling and video self-evaluation to determine if these were useful ways to learn yoga without adding more stress onto ourselves. The results showed that these two methods were a useful and effective tool for learning.
In this section, I will be going over the original study we looked at and the literature review we conducted. The original study, we are replicating, analyzed the percentage of correct steps for 3 yoga poses with 2 participants who are university students as ourselves. In both the original study and the replication, we looked at the Shavasana, Vrikshasana, and Virabhadrasana yoga poses. These are better known as Downward Dog, Warrior 2, and Tree. These 3 poses are ones that are relatively common in the yoga community, and they are basic stepping stones for the rest of yoga practices, so they are a good first 3 to start out with. The original study used a self-evaluation method to score their task analysis during the intervention phase, and they used a multiple baseline design study. The original study did see increases in the percentage of correct steps in all 3 yoga poses for both participants. Because of their success, we decided to use the same multiple baseline study and video self-evaluation method to record ourselves. Exercising is one of those topics that people either really love or people really hate. I am one who does not like working out that much, so I know people like me are always looking for ways to make it a more enjoyable task. But if we were told that being physically active could help reduce stress and promote mindfulness, it might be more appealing to students like ourselves. The literature we looked at recommended getting active for 30 minutes a day, and this has been shown to reduce responses to psychological stressors. This same article that was posted in 2020 said that during increased times of workload or pressure, getting active can help lower vulnerability to these stressors. Practicing yoga has been shown to reduce stress levels in students, according to a 2022 article we found. So if we're able to combine that 30 minutes of exercise with something that helps us reduce stress, who wouldn't want to try it, right? The 2022 article specifically mentioned how yoga can be helpful for enhancing higher education students' health and well-being during the current pandemic times. Because this article was only published a year ago, I think it's safe to say that stresses from pandemic times are still a thing we are dealing with, so this is a very relevant topic for today. Furthermore, participants from this study found that they felt benefits aligned with emotional self-regulation, mind clearance, relaxation, and concentration. And I mean, who doesn't want to work on those kinds of traits as a person? Moving on to the rest of the literature review, we also looked at articles that evaluated the effectiveness of video self-evaluation and skill acquisition. We found some that had results leading to support the idea that video modeling is effective in teaching learners skills that they can physically see, such as yoga poses, right? The results of one study found that video self-modeling helped potty training, and the kids did gain the skills that were physically present in the video. Furthermore, there are studies that show the effectiveness of using self-evaluation for learning yoga poses, such as our study. One other study showed that each student made significant progress in learning the yoga poses after the introduction of self-evaluation. These results also showed that the skills were maintained after multiple weeks after intervention was removed. That is a really hopeful sign in how our maintenance is going. I am hopeful that our maintenance can also be maintained after a few weeks with video self-evaluation.
In this slide, we will be going over the purpose. In today's world, there are so many jobs and master's programs that can be considered very stressful. This stress can affect not only your mental health, but physical as well. With that being said, the current replication study was chosen because of the participants' similar decision in occupation and educational pursuits. With that being said, online graduate students have to figure out how to work a full-time job and achieve the grades needed to complete the program they are in. The work-school balance tends to lessen the amounts of free time that may be used to relieve their stress. This is when finding and going to a yoga class would come into play. The purpose of the current study is to figure out if video modeling and video self-evaluation are useful and effective ways of learning yoga without having to find time to locate and pay for a yoga class. In this slide, we'll be going over the methods, participants, and settings. The participants are 5 graduate students attending Ball State University. These 5 students are in the online Applied Behavioral Analysis program. There's me, Jonna, age 23, Jasmine and Julia, ages 24, and Martha and Ryan, ages 25. All participants were interested in learning yoga. 4 out of the 5 students had no experience, while 1 had about 5 years experience. This study was conducted in the home of the 5 participants. Each individual wanted to learn yoga to reduce stress before studying. All participants were told not to partake in yoga outside of the sessions.
On this slide, I'll be going over the materials we used. The materials we used during this study were yoga mats, our phones, task analysis, which included steps of how to conduct each yoga pose, and we also used YouTube videos in which the instructor explained the steps of each of the poses that we had to do. And we also used a task analysis for grading and for treatment integrity data. For the target behavior, it was the 3 yoga poses, which I'm going to call the tree pose, the warrior 2 pose, and the downward dog pose.
In this slide, I'll be talking about data collection. The way we collect the data is by recording ourselves doing each pose using our personal cell phone cameras. Then we score the videos using the task analysis. So, task analysis was used to score each pose as we marked each step correct or incorrect. Then we divided the correct number of responses by the total number of steps and then multiplied by 100 to get a percentage of the total score. This slide will be going over the Inter-Observer Agreement, or IOA, and treatment integrity. On the left side of the screen is IOA. Each participant sent their video to 2 other members. An agreement is seen when both the observers score a step as correct or incorrect. The formula used to determine this is dividing the number of agreed steps on the task analysis by the number of total steps on the task analysis and multiply 100 for percentage. On the right side is treatment integrity. Each participant sent a video of themselves to 1 other member. Then the observer who watched that video scored this and used a separate task analysis for treatment integrity. The formula for this we used is dividing the number of correct steps with the total steps and multiply by 100 to get the percentage.
For the design, our group used multiple baselines designed across behaviors. Each participant recorded themselves completing each pose, and we also sent 2 videos a day, which counted as 2 assessment sessions per day, and we did this for 4 days out of the week. And each video only contained 1 pose.
In this slide, I'll be going over the different phases, which were baseline, intervention, and maintenance. In the baseline phase, the instructor in each video acted as a model during the first 2 sessions of baseline. There was no feedback given for any of these poses during this time. Videos lasted at least 2 minutes each for the 3 yoga poses, and each member sent their videos to one another for grading purposes. In the intervention phase, experimenters recorded their own videos in the phase, and immediately after would watch and score their pose using the task analysis. By the first assessment session, the group selected one member to show everyone else how to score each pose. After learning how to score, each member scored themselves without any guidance. If treatment integrity was found to fall below 80%, retraining was done for the entire group. During the maintenance phase, everyone recorded themselves performing all 3 poses for 5 weeks after the removal of the intervention of the study.
So, and now we are on the results section. And this is a table of my data for average and range for all 3 poses. As you can see from my data, my intervention and maintenance average and ranges have all greatly improved from baseline, which kind of gives you an idea that there is a functional relationship between our intervention and the behaviors. And here are my graphs. And just so it can give you a clear idea of that functional relationship that I was talking about. And as you can see for my baseline for downward dog, I was having a continued decelerating trend line right here. So, and after so many times of decelerate of it going down, I was able to go straight into intervention without having to achieve stability, and my data shows that the intervention did greatly improve the way I was doing the poses.
In this slide, we will be going over my results. As you can see on the table, this table is used to show the percentage of the correct steps. You see my percentages for each of the poses. You can also see the baseline average and range, the intervention average and range, and the maintenance average and range. On this slide, you can overall see that my multiple baseline treatment design depicts my percentage of the correct steps for the 3 yoga poses. You can see that the data shows an increase in percentage during all 3 intervention phases for the 3 different yoga poses as well.
This is the table for my results. The ranges for my baseline do go a long range. They're pretty large range. I do have the experience in yoga, so I kind of was just guessing how to do the poses during baseline based on what I already knew. Then when I moved into intervention, I actually had the steps in front of me, and as you can see on the table, my averages went up quite a bit, especially for the last pose, which is the tree pose. On my graphs, you can see in the middle pose, which is the Warrior 2 pose, there was quite a drastic decreasing trend during baseline. So then I was able to move up into intervention. And once I had the steps in front of me, once I could see the steps, I was back up into it. I had pretty stable data at 100%. On the tree pose, which is the bottom graph on that multiple baseline graph, my baseline data for that is not the most stable, so I had to wait until that was stable before I could move into intervention.
Okay, table 4 shows my percentage of correct steps for each of the yoga poses, as well as the average and range during the baseline, intervention, and maintenance phases. You can see my average for the tree pose, which is the last pose, was not the best. I did have trouble with that one. As far as the Warrior 2 pose, I did pretty well. Compared to the tree pose, I did struggle a lot with the tree and also with the downward dog one, but you can see an increase from baseline. And this shows my graph. If you could look at the first one for downward dog, it was pretty much stable. And then once I went into intervention, it was a little rocky, but eventually it went back up. I had a drop during the maintenance phase, but got it back up. And as far as the Warrior Two pose, it's a little, I guess it shows, I believe it's called like, I don't know the term for it, but anyways, uh, and for the last graph for the tree pose, it was not the best. I don't think I got more than 53% on that one. So the data pretty much stayed the same compared to the other two poses.
The table 5 shows my percentage of correct steps, and it's showing my average and the ranges for each of the 3 poses within each phase. Much like Jasmine, I didn't really do so well with the tree pose. As you can see in baseline, I had no idea what I was doing, but slowly, as intervention hit and then maintenance hit, I was able to pick it up and have some stable data. This graph depicts my percentage of correct steps in correlation to the session. Over time, I can say that I slowly got better at performing each pose as my trend and levels were increasing over time and becoming more stable. As I got to maintaining these poses, I was able to be stable in my data, which shows that I was performing more steps correct by the end of the experiment.
And now we will be discussing our results. The results of the study show that video modeling and video self-evaluation does have potential to teach learner yoga poses. The results also show that the intervention does have long-lasting effects since learners maintain the skills 2 weeks after intervention was pulled. The current studies results provide further support that the original study on on the use of self-evaluation, and it shows that it does work out. The use of these procedures would allow people to learn yoga without the need to go to a different location or pay for yoga instructor, because if you're a graduate student like us, there's not a whole lot of extra income to do it, and it's so hard to find time to actually go to a pose. So if you're able to use like online poses and use a video self-evaluation, that'll help out a whole lot. Now we're going to discuss the limitations of our study. Not all the participants were at the same level of experience when it comes to yoga poses. I say this because Julia had like 5 years of experience, for while the rest of us had little to no experience whatsoever. And that limitation comes with we don't fully know if Julia's scores were due to the intervention or from her learning history. A second limitation is the participants were miles apart from one another throughout the entirety of the study and only met through video call on a bi-weekly basis. And for this is a limitation because with the participants being so far away, we weren't entirely sure like if we were all being perfectly honest with our results, and it provide and there could be questions to it. Our third limitation is that all the participants were also acting in the role of researchers in the study. And this is a problem because it's very beneficial to have the researcher and participant being completely different people, so that way like it lessens the bias one may have when performing data collection. And since for us we were all one, there could have been potential for bias. uh no neutral part Another limitation is that no neutral parties were providing results for baseline conditions of the poses performed by the participants. And what this was is basically, since we were providing baseline data, we were sending our baseline videos to other participants in the study. There could have been some problems, like we don't really know if we were all being truthful for our scoring, and we don't like some people could have been giving stable results just for the sake of being able to move on. And that can provide some internal validity problems for our study. And there was no way of knowing the participants were being honest during their baseline phases. So, for all we know, some participants could have been purposely performing poorly just to try to show that there is a functional relationship. And that in and of itself can cause a lot of problems for internal validity. And finally, there was no neutral third parties providing inter-observer agreement data for the study. We were all grading ourselves, and we all had a stake in the study. So the fact that there was no neutral party providing that IOA data can also lead to some questions of internal validity. Now, here are some future considerations to do for whoever wishes to further along the study of this intervention. One is use participants that all have a novel experience when it comes to yoga. This will just help make sure that you know that, well, it can help you make sure that those who want to learn yoga and are actual participants, and it'll especially help if they're all novel, so you can see if there is a functional relationship. The second consideration is make sure that participants are not also acting as researchers during the experiment, and this goes in line with what I was talking about in the limitation section. This just helps reduces the chance of bias. The third consideration is limit the amount of information that the participants have about the purpose of the study until after the study is over. This is to make sure that the participants don't try to intentionally alter their data. The fourth is use participants that are close geographically and to schedule weekly meetings. This helps the researcher gain more control over the experiment, and they can just control for the factors that for all other factors, so that way it can be a real good study that has good internal validity. And the fifth one is use neutral third parties who do not know the purpose of the study to provide inter-observer agreement data. By doing this, you're helping reduce bias while also increasing internal validity of it, and you're just making it more likely that people will trust your results. And these are our references. Thank you all so much for viewing this video, and we hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much.